like I said, the way that we're going to start thinking about this new project is maybe a little different than we might start a more conventional project. And the reason for that is I want to be very intentional about how you are mentally designing, how you are brainstorming, how you're approaching the concept. And along with that, what is driving the design, okay? So I'm kind of taking your brain on a different path than it would normally go in order to teach you how to do it differently, right? So I'm gonna ask you to be very specific about what you're thinking based on what I'm telling you, okay? I know that it's not the way you are used to thinking, and your brain is gonna wanna like go in a different direction, and I'm gonna ask you to just like reroute yourself back to where we're going, okay? So this is our imaginary friend unit. This is based on actually the art teacher before me did a kind of a similar project, and so this is kind of a expansion, redevelopment of her idea, so I can't take credit for the original idea. And how we're going to approach this is I am going to lead you through a series of questions and ideas and things to think about, and I want you, as we're going through, to just brainstorm. Just write down kind of what you're thinking about, answer the questions the way I'm asking them. You don't have to commit to anything on the paper for right now, just kind of brain dump all of the ideas, and then we'll lead you through. Does that make sense? Okay, so here's our guided brainstorm. This is our prompt. You are designing a being, and being very intentional with that language. It is vague on purpose. A being that exists to help, protect, or accompany you in some way. Okay, so you know imaginary friend, and you know what we just said. Okay, so just kind of, you can write down some things. So imagine, what does this friend do for you? Maybe this is based on an experience from your childhood. Maybe this is based on something you just are thinking of right now off the top of your head. Maybe this is based on somebody or some experience that you are aware of, maybe someone you know or a family member. But now bring it back to the context of you. You're designing somebody for you. So what does this friend do for you? When would you need them the most? So whatever they do, when would you need that? And what kind of presence from this being would feel comforting or feel useful to you? How would you describe that presence? That comforting, helpful, protective type of being. What do they do for you? And how does that feel? How would you describe that? Okay. How does your imaginary friend behave in a room? If they walked into the room, how would they behave? What would they do? What would they be like? How does this being interact with you? Does this imaginary friend seek attention? Does it crave attention, or does it avoid attention? Is it very active? Is it more still? Does it kind of hang back and observe from a distance? Is it just aware of things, or is it reactive to what is going on? So think about your personality and then think of how does your imaginary friend work with you? How does it interact with you? Does this being prefer closeness or distance? Does it maybe prefer closeness to you and distance from other people? Or is that the same regardless of who this being is around? Is it protective? Is its personality more playful or more quiet or very curious as to what's going on? Or is it more nervous and cautious and reserved? Okay, so we're talking a lot about personality right now. So your brainstorm is going to be a lot of words right now. That's okay. What kind of sound does your imaginary friend make? Does it talk to you in words? Does it make beeps and squeaks and unintelligible noises?
Unintelligible colors.
There we go. Does it sound mechanical? Does it just breathe heavily and it communicates based on size? Some days I would like to communicate just on size. You guys would probably interpret them really accurately. How does your imaginary friend move through space? Does it walk? Does it crawl? Does it float? Does it fly? Does it slither? Does it roll? Does it limp? What does it feel like to be near this being? When you are near it or it is near you, how does that make you feel? And when you are not around this being, what is it doing? Is it totally different when you're there, or is its personality more consistent? It's just like that all the time. So if you walked in a room, your imaginary friend was there, would it change its behavior because you walked in, or would it stay the same? Okay, a lot of words on the screen right now. Choose one from each category. So choose a behavior, choose a temperament, you can choose more than one habit if you want, and choose some likes and dislikes for your imaginary friend.
So imaginary friend could be like really creepy. He just floats around and doesn't really say much, and it's like he just kind of observes and stands in the corner.
Could be. We're establishing personality, right? That sounds like a distinct personality.
Yeah. He just watches.
So also think about, like, given that hypothetical personality, how does that interact with you then? How is that, like, protective or comforting or supportive for you? Maybe that's what you need. I don't know. Let me know when you're good on the screen. Anybody still need a minute on this? Good. Okay. So, one sentence trait summary. We're going to compile all of that down into kind of one summative sentence. So, my imaginary friend is a being that is defined by, pick your dominant ideas, the most significant ones off of your sheet. Ideally, like 4 to 5 dominant traits, but you can have more for extra flavor. And make sure this sentence is like underlined or boxed or circled or something really obvious on your sheet, because we're going to come back to this one. This is a really important kind of driving concept for our project. This is a good day to do this. Good. Nervous energy. Maybe not nervous, maybe just like, anxious, excited. I'm excited. Are we good? Can I go?
Yeah.
Okay, so how does all of that now translate to character design, right? So character design, when a character is being created and imagined and developed, right? It comes from a collection of really intentional design decisions. We've talked about purpose and intention a lot in your design work, right? So every visual trait that you see in your character is really communicating something about who that character is. So we are designing a character. We are not just interpreting a character. It's not like we walk into a room and we meet this being and we have to determine what they are like based on what they look like. It's the opposite. We are determining what their personality and their character traits are first, and that is going to drive the visual design. Does that make sense? Okay? So design choices are not random and they're not unsupported. Okay? So it's not just going to be pink because that's our favorite color. It's going to be pink because that has to do with its personality and that communicates something about who this character or this being is and what they do and who they are. Does that make sense? I said that redundantly, but you get it, okay? You are designing, you are not interpreting. And your brain is gonna wanna do the opposite because you're already good at that and that's what you are used to, right? So make sure, okay, the dog is wagging the tail, not the tail wagging the dog, okay? So we're going from traits to visual design, and that's why we spent all this time doing that guided brainstorm, so you have some really solid personality traits first, okay? And now we are going to take all of these things about our character. So what do you need to know about their personality and behavior, their movement, you thought about that, their habits, their likes and dislikes, maybe they have fears, maybe they have some quirks, right? Some of the most interesting characters I know have all sorts of quirks, right? And then what is their relationship like with you? That's also a really driving force, because sometimes an imaginary friend in concept, it could be something that a person imagines, but it's, you know, it's imaginary, right? So no one else is gonna see that character the same way. Maybe you guys don't know this. You guys know Sesame Street?
Yeah.
You know Mr. Snuffleupagus, right? Who dropped the Mr. after a couple of decades. Originally, that character was conceived as an imaginary friend for Big Bird. So original, if you go back to like decades ago, the super early episodes, the other people on Sesame Street could not see Snuffy. Only Big Bird could see him. And then one day they decided to like reveal him to everybody and his character kind of changed. But originally he was conceived as this imaginary being that only Big Bird could see. So think about that. That's going to add complexity to your character. Can you see them differently than everybody else? Okay, and what would that difference be like? Okay, so based on those traits that you have now kind of figured out, right? How does that determine the size and proportions of that character's body, right? So if they are a very active, kind of loud, boisterous personality, maybe that means they're going to be a little bit bigger, right? If they are more shy and reserved, maybe that is communicated through their smaller stature, okay? What is their body shape like? Are they long and slender? Are they kind of roly-poly? Are they, you know, just all sorts of weird body proportions where they have just like different sizes pieced together? Like, the sky is the limit on this, but all of these things, right? The number, the placement, and the type of limbs. Like, you wouldn't think that you would get to think about that, but you do, right? You're not limited to human forms. This could be literally anything that fits that personality, right? But the personality is going to determine all of these things, okay? So when you're thinking about all of these different factors, you're getting those design choices from their personality traits and from how they act and how they behave and what they are like, okay? So you're using those to communicate that personality, because you're not gonna stand out there in the display case and say these things to people as they walk by. You're not gonna say, this character is really protective and is really fun and he tells really great jokes, right? You have to show that through the visual characteristics of the character, okay? So things like stability, how stable are they? Do they balance on, you know, one leg and they kind of hang from things? Do they fly? Do they not have any feet at all? Do they roll? Like, think about all of those different things. Think about surface textures. Are they slimy? Are they scaly? Do they have fur? Are they snuggly, right? There's all sorts of options there. Think about wardrobe. They can wear clothes. They can have accessories, right? Are they cold all the time? Do they shiver? Do they need a little hat and a scarf? I don't know, okay? So, Then, how does that translate into design? Let's put some academic art vocabulary back into this, right? Are you using organic or geometric shapes and forms? What does that suggest about your character? If they're really spiky and pointy and angly, you're probably not going to cuddle with them, right? So how does their personality suggest that they should be designed? What is the mass or the volume of them? Do they take up a lot of space? Are they kind of gangly, where they're kind of thin but they have a lot of negative space? Are they just solid, right? Now, I would not recommend designing something that is like one solid blob, because that's going to be hard to design it at a complex level for a project that you're being graded on, right? So there is some factoring in that you have to do there, okay? Think about how you're showing unity and variety, right? What kind of details are different, but also how does their character form make sense in one body, right? How are you balancing colors or details or different visual components? Are you repeating things within their body? Maybe they have scales, maybe they have certain details that are on their shoulders and on their knees, right? What part is being emphasized? Of those traits, what is the most dominant? How are you going to show that first to your viewer? How are you going to use textures? How are you going to use contrast? Are they all the same color, or are there different parts that can speak to the different personality traits? How can you incorporate symbolism, right? If your imaginary friend carries a little teddy bear or something, right? If they have a little prop, that's another way that you can suggest and communicate things about them. What parts are more obvious and what parts are more abstract or more stylized? Okay? I know that the term realistic with an imaginary friend kind of seems counterintuitive, right? But you can think about it as, what parts do you want to communicate are more recognizable, and what parts are more just suggestive. You're suggesting or referencing the idea of something rather than outright showing it. Okay? Color is going to be a huge one. Think about what colors suggest when you see them. How do different colors make you feel? How are combinations of those colors then going to suggest the different personality traits of your character? Because your character is going to sit in a display case. It's not going to actually make the noises. It's not going to have a conversation with you or with the viewers. It has to just appear that way, right? And then think about hierarchy. Hierarchy and emphasis are very closely related, right? Hierarchy is, what do you see first, then what do you see, then what do you see? And what I am noticing about watching people see your junk creature projects is they see what the thing is at first, and then they're drawn in like, oh, what is that made of? What are all the little things, right? So with the concept of the junk project, the more different pieces you can incorporate, the more interesting it is. How are you going to apply that concept now? And we're not just using junk pieces, we're using other materials, so that the viewer seeing your work sees a character and sees a being first, but then as they look closer, they are drawn into more details that are more subtle that they can kind of discover as part of that viewing journey. Does that make sense? Okay, so think about display in this way. So I'm showing you this now so you kind of know what to plan for. So this is my silly illustration of the display case. This is the shelf. Okay, this is the backing board. So you're going to make some sort of visual sign that lists some of the traits or personality characteristics of your imaginary friend. Okay, you can make that as complex or as simple as you want. You can put a paragraph on there, you can put just words like a mood board. Okay, I'm going to leave that part up to you. That is your choice. But it's going to go behind, and then your character, your being, whatever it is, will sit kind of in front of that. So they will be seen together, so you're probably going to want to use like similar colors, pick fonts or lettering styles that mimic the personality of your character, right? All of this is visual communication. So it's not just what the words say, but it's what they look like. But just kind of design with this goal in mind. Does that give you a sense of like scale? Okay, questions on this? Okay, so starting tomorrow, I'm going to give you tomorrow to kind of work through that visual planning, brainstorming, iteration, refining, some thumbnailing probably, working all of that out before we start construction next week. I could do it in that time.
Thank you, Miss Harpold.
Have a good day.
Yeah.